Hey there, rulers. DMO73 here, bringing you a showdown between myself, wielding the sword of the Replicant Aristella and his 12 Sacred Knights, versus Paul and his take on Giotto tanks. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, the Ruler School Circuit Series, now taking orders on our Q1 2025 Skibdis circuit kits, and to our guest lecturer members, Vite Ramen and Casey Madden. Class is in session. So as we get into it here, just a reminder that you can pick up your tickets to the Force Will Festival and GP taking place in June at the Radisson Hotel in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We really hope to see you there. So we are playing Replicant Aristella versus Giotto tanks. Now, Replicant Aristella is the 12 Sacred Knights tribal deck. Replicant Aristella from the ABC deck gives your, you can play 12 Sacred Knights as if they had quick cast. You can pay one and pitch a 12 Sacred Knight card, do search for a 12 Sacred Knight Resonator and put it into your hand, and as a God's Art for 1 white to search your hand or deck for a copy of the Great Wall of the 12 Sacred Knights and put it into the field, which is pretty cool. Normally you see I'm playing that ABC Regalia there. It would be really helpful if I had a graveyard, but I'm playing against Giotto, who is saying that my graveyard doesn't get to exist. So we'll have to play into that. And you do see there, we're playing a couple copies of End of the False Savior. We are a go-wide Resonator-driven strat deck that is going to rely a lot on like combat tricks and stuff like that to be able to try to push damage. And so against, you know, to have a backup strat against decks like Ruchil or things like that, I'm also playing End of the False Savior, because it's a way to kind of capitalize on big boards existing to try to burn through for face there. I do keep the Regalia in hand just to maybe go use it even as a discard, even if I'm dealing with Giotto, just to get into a position where I can go get a 12 Sacred Knight if I need to. Paul's going to start with a coin out for Yggdrasil, gets to go search for a Regalia, and all of the tanks are Regalia, so that works really nice for Giotto. And then it can produce Will for the Regalia, like the tank that then produces Will, right? So it's a way to kind of keep the ramp up alive here for her pretty effectively. And then we're going to just kind of pass from there. Maybe see if there's another turn 1 play. Does say he's going to go ahead and pass. We're going to go ahead and get a body out onto the field to play into that. Again, we're trying to kind of play into the End of the False Savior route probably here in this particular matchup with the Rogue Spectator. Try to get some early damage, turn it in there. Also, if he does use, you know, the Yggdrasil next turn to play a Regalia, that's pretty helpful for us because we can then throw the Rogue Spectator into the Yggdrasil without losing really any value. Gonna try to use Wuja Wu to make one of those Pitch Black Moon rulers. We're just indicating it with a die. Altamont Stone, 3 more life. That's great for me. I love to see every piece of damage go away here. Starts to use 2. Does decide to use the Yggdrasil instead to play down the mana ramp tank, Lunar L58. Probably will then, I imagine, might use that immediately as well to play something different, something like a Hue, but he does actually, he already used his Black Source, so instead just going to pass the turn, and we're going to play an Omnis, member of the 12 Sacred Knights. Also from the ABC deck, what this is going to do is make it so if one of us gains life, the other one also gains life, and then neither of us can gain life until the end of the turn. Like essentially the first life gain every turn makes that happen, and Omnis can give something drain. Now, this wouldn't be super helpful in this matchup, but Omnis in general could be very good in something like an Aideen deck, right? Especially since you can give things drain until the end of the game, and then suddenly you do a lot of weird stuff to your opponent and get some incidental damage through life loss that you weren't, you know, originally thinking you were going to get. We're going to just kind of go ahead and try to go straight to face. Maybe leave Omnis up as a blocker. Ultimately, yep, choosing to use Omnis as a blocker. Go to Paul's turn. He draws for turn. And then attempts to use the tank's ability to recover itself and draw a card. We are going to respond to that by using the God Art ability of Hydria, so that we can make it so that they can only draw 1 card per turn. Double checking exactly when the things went off here. Hits that light vapors. Still got a couple will open on my end, which is really helpful. We could do something like cast in Hydria. We can also cast that Algaria, which is probably will be what comes down here. Ultimately, maybe thinking that Paul's just going to pass the turn. He's got several of those thrones in hand. And a couple girls staring at. He also has Hue. End of the turn, we are going to go ahead and flash in that Algaria. Because it gets can be cast as if it had Quest Cast thanks to the Aristella. It's a pretty good card here. Gets us a Shelly. So that we can then use it to pump Algaria next turn, which is very helpful. Move to recovery, call stone. The Crown Stone. The Crown Stone very good for the 12 Sacred Knights. Most of them are mono attribute 2 cost or more resonators, so it's a really easy way to buffer them to make sure they don't have to worry about getting canceled. It keeps them around for a turn, which is really nice. We're going to try to swing in the air for 8, thanks to Algaria revealing Shelly. Down comes that Lunar Throne. He's going to try to use this for the destruction and drain modes here. Thankfully, in true 12 Sacred Knight fashion, we are going to make sure we're going to try to protect those. This leaves Paul with 2 will at this point. We're going to flash in a attempt to use the Goddard ability of Raymond. Seeing if this is going to resolve. Paul does have Mirror in hand. Could use it. But I think him seeing that I still have 3 will and that I could choose to just cast Raymond might be something that's kind of holding him back here. So he's going to let the Raymond enter effect and pump resolve to give them Eternal, and then try to go for a Girl Staring At to remove the Eternal. So a little bit of a heavier will investment play, but pretty potentially successful. Unfortunately for Paul, though, this does tap him out, which leaves us into the math, what we've already done, in a weird position for that card we saved at the beginning, just tracking here. So Algaria is 10, Omnis is 8, Rogue Spectator is 8, Raymond is another 12. That's way more than enough for End of the False Savior to kill him. We will just target the Yggdrasil and burn him with the cost of everything else, the strength of everything else on the field. So a nice little combat trick, like I said there before, getting us a nice, clean, quick game 1 win. Thankfully, did not have to play too heavily into the losing my graveyard here from Giotto. We were able to kind of keep everything on board. We're not sure if that's going to happen again. Post-Mulligan, you see we have 2 of the Regalia in hand. Not super great, although we can always just pitch them to go find better 12 Sacred Knights as needed, which might come up. Some noticeable 12 Sacred Knights that are much better when giving quick cast would be things like Lumiere, the 2-drop white one that can stop stuff from attacking or blocking, as well as Vakis. Vakis is pretty good to be able to make have quick cast. We do just see a Crown Stone and a pass. The Crown Stone is also very nice because we can use it without paying life to play the activate ability of Aristella to go get ourselves a 12 Sacred Knight, which is nice. Down comes another Lunar 58. Choosing not to search there before recovery, which I think at this point is kind of a mistake. Like, with the hand being what it is, it does feel like a little bit of a loss of will. Those cards are going to be dead in hand. Maybe the thought is keep 1 to be able to do resonance triggers later, but I don't really see the purpose of that. Paul's going to try to, before the end of my turn, use the Lunar L58 ability to tap produce white off of the flute, and then use both of them to recover L58 and draw a card. Seems pretty good for keeping his hand stacked here, value-wise. Moving to recovery. Oh, no. Choosing before recovery to use it to make a a moon for judgment with Wu Jia Wu. We're going to go ahead and respond at this point in time to quick cast in Vacus, using the Goddard ability of the stone to be able to produce the color we need, so we can get that tank off the board. And now we have access to a Vacus, which is nice. If another tank comes down, you know, we have the will for the Goddard for that, to be able to remove all of those from the deck, which is nice. Although he does have a Executioner here, which is certainly going to kill the Vacus because he only has barrier total cost 1 or less. So our first card removed from the game, face down by Giotto here, definitely means that Paul will be able to make use of that later if he chooses. Do see that End of the False Savior is in hand again. That could be mattering later. Hydria, Girl Staring At, a couple of the Regalia. Olgaria's back. Warhorse is in hand. Not super great to see that, though. For recovery, we are going to see that Lunar Throne start to eat my deck, and he's going to pay it in such a way that he has lower life than me, so it's also a life drain effect. Do not have a response for it at that point in time, so I'm just going to eat some cards. And if Paul has another throne in his hand, then we're at a point where he can start to kind of really ramp up to Eclipse pretty dang quick. Swings in for 9. Gonna go ahead and try to flash in. I think the idea here being that we're going to leave that will open, paying 1 to try to flash in Olgaria. I think the idea here is we're going to try to go get a Shelly. Shelly to be able to prevent the damage that he will do to us. And then we will be able to block with the Olgaria and kill it, since it's only 9/6. Don't super love this line, you know, into a deck that plays Girl Staring At and stuff that has destruction with 4 open will, 5 open will technically, but you know, you got to try to make a move otherwise, or avoid taking 10 damage here. So the Shelly comes down, but there is the mirror from Paul, so she is going to get expelled, and then we're probably still gonna just try to, well, we chose not to trade. This is kind of to set up a little bit of the End of the False Savior line potentially as well. We are going to go ahead and pitch our Regalia there, knowing that it's going to go face down to try to search. And Paul says no. Second mirror stops that. I think I'm kind of okay with this. It's now eaten 2 of the mirrors out of his hand, which means future searchers will be fine, or other things like that. It also means 1 less mirror to answer End of the False Savior if it comes up. So that feels pretty okay. I am at a point, though, where I'm going to need to start answering things. So we'll go ahead and pay 1 to pitch to go search for a 12 Sacred Knight, seeing if it resolves this time. He doesn't have any water to pay for it, so even if he had a mirror, he couldn't use it, which feels good for us. Probably going to go get a Vacus. Yeah, that makes the most sense. Vacus is the card that will let us not only answer this Executioner pretty handedly just from his tap ability, but we can do kind of a whole bunch of stuff, and we can save it for if it's instant speed. We'll swing at him for 6. Try to take him back down to 4,000. And Paul does have the second Lunar Throne here, so now we're going to start getting to Eclipse very, very, very quickly. So because he's going to keep cycling the thrones for the other thrones, yeah, it doesn't take long to get to only 13 cards face down at that point in time. We are going to see a +1/+1 counter attempted to be put on top of the Executioner, and I think at this point in time is probably where the Vacus should come into play to try to stop it. Potentially. Nope, we are going to let him have the +1/+1 counter here and move to recovery. Paul up to 5 stones. Gonna go to try to swing in with the Executioner. Down comes the Vacus. Vacus is gonna try to get this Executioner off the board. And then we do see a Dark Alice attempt to flash in, but we're going to go ahead and Godsart Hydria here, and we get some pretty solid value off of this. He's already drawn for turn, so that means he can't draw another card, but he is still forced to discard a card or banish a Resonator by the Dark Alice. So he will banish the Executioner, which makes sense, he was already going to lose it, and then he has to do it again. So he either has to discard a card or sack one of the things that are on the field. Just kind of explaining that you have to do the effect of Dark Alice twice. That's how she works. So he's going to have to do something else and get Dark Alice. So essentially, Paul just paid one will, do nothing, right? Which is great. We like that a lot. Wastes another card out of his hand, gets the Executioner off board. We've got the Vacus. If he tries to go for a Regalia now, we're in good shape. The problem is that the biggest problem here is that Throne answers Vacus because it's a 2-drop, and so Paul's already going to be doing the cycling stuff anyway, and so this is not great for us. Like, we need something like Rayman, which we could get, but the other problem is then again he's just going to grab the other Throne. So it's just kind of this like infinite like damage cycle where like I have to put out too many bodies for him to try to be able to answer with the Thrones, because all the time he's just going to be making more. He's going to be casting the Thrones again. So Throne's coming out. It's going to hit the Vacus. It's going to destroy it. It's going to get to mill the top 3 cards of my deck to the RFG face down. I don't even get to see what they are. He buys the other Throne back. You can see we're very quickly into the cycle of this is what this deck is trying to do, really just minimize the resources. And then when he does flip Giotto, he'll have access to every single card that I flipped face down. So then suddenly you're talking about, you know, he can do instant speed Vacus back to me. Like, the longer the game goes against Giotto, the worse it gets, especially once they have the double Thrones. Because they just keep buying the same Throne back and back and back. Does see his tank there. It does have access to another mirror, it looks like, as well. Did choose to make a military token that time. As he swings with the military token, after that little edit, we're going to go ahead and do Girl Staring At to try to draw a card, see if we can get something, and also maybe turn off the mana ramp for a turn. Then we're going to flash in Omnis. Thankfully, in this situation, Omnis has Barrier. So Omnis will be able to stick around, can't be hit by the Thrones. So that feels pretty good for us, and we will be able to block this military token that he made off of the Throne. Still not in the best shape here, but at least it does keep me alive for a little bit longer. Does decide to go ahead and use Throne to make another token and do the cycle. So 3 more cards get eaten. He makes another token, buys the crown back, the other Throne back to hand. So he'll be able to cast 2. I mean, like, before recovery, he'll be able to cast 2 more Thrones and make 2 more bodies. Because, you know, I only have 1 will available at this point in time. Go to my turn, move to recovery. Probably just going to leave Omnis up at this point in time. No real reason to swing. I do have the ability to do the Godsart, but right now I don't have a second 12 Sacred Knight, so it won't actually get me any card advantage. Although it probably should. I probably should do this because if I can keep 12 Sacred Knights on board, then I will have Barrier, which means he can't keep milling my deck. So you see there's the Ignia in hand. There's a world where it's correct to play the Ignia just to get a 12 Sacred Knight, so I can go for the Godsart in there. The other big problem, though, that's very interesting in this particular situation is any card when I come into play, the 12 Sacred Knights flicker a stone, which removes it from the game and then puts it back into play. But because I'm removing something from the game under Giotto, that stone will get removed from the game face down instead, so it doesn't get to come back. So that's a little unfortunate. So I have to be really careful with when I'm going to put these guys out. Essentially, I'm going to go down a stone just to cast them. We're going to see the cycle. You see he has a third throne in hand. So like really not good. A high speed uppercut treatment would feel really good here because I could just rip every copy of it out there is. Makes another token here, removes the top 3 cards and does the buyback cycle. Paul sitting on 2 thrones in hand. And at this point in time, we are going to see the Queen's Alabaster Flying Bastion. It's going to come out here, gets to draw him 2 cards, although he can't because of Hydria, thank goodness. And then we probably will see a Judgment here, I can imagine. It's a very big pressure, and I have so many cards removed that he'd be in a pretty good spot. He knows he has access to things like Vakis, or things, although Vakis can't target 12 Sacred Knights, so not super great right now. But has access to things like Girl Staring At, probably access to a lot of other good cards. So I'm just going to put this pile of cards here for him to be able to look at. Giotto lets him look at my face down pile for as long as he wants, and he can start paying cards to reveal, flip face up, cards from my RFG, and then cast, put a copy of them on the chase, which is pretty nuts. So essentially all the cards that he is, every single time that he has done the throne, it's essentially been draw 3, which is a little bit silly. We're really just trying to be careful here to make sure that we can get through things. We're probably going to try to go for a Rayman play just to try to like search and be able to set up for a Godsart. He only has 2 will available at this point, so we're at a pretty potential good spot here to be able to maybe try to make something happen with this End of the False Savior that's in hand. Acknowledging that we're going to lose the stone, we are just going to go ahead and hard cast this Hydria just to put another body on board. Says that's fine. We'll RFG that card, draw for turn. I do now have access to the Godsart for the Wall of the 12 Sacred Knights, which arguably I should go for there before recovery, but I choose not to, which I think is a mistake. It could be RFG'd face down, like it could still not be in the deck. The deck is only playing 1, but it is still a matter of like, hey, let's be smart to go grab it. And then I could also try to do, a search for a Raymond. But again, I don't even know if a Raymond is in hand that this is still in the deck. The deck is also only playing 1 of those. So there's a very real likelihood that it's been expelled or RFG'd. So keeping a couple bodies on board. 3 12 Sacred Knight things in public zones does not make my dragon very cheap. You see I do have the dragon in hand, and because I had to lose the stone to Hydria, it's not worth my time. Paul using the effect here from Giotto to go into my RFG area face down and cast a card of that cost. He's going to go ahead and what is he going to grab? We're going to grab it. Probably not. Again, it's not going to be Vakis because he'd have to target something. Does choose to call Girl Staring At. It's not going to get to draw anything out of it, but it is totally fine for him to play. Gets to go back to grave. I do have a graveyard now, so if I had another copy of the Regalia, weirdly enough, I could do it. And then he chooses to animate the Alabaster with Mobilize, which, interestingly enough, I think unfortunately seals Paul's fate here, because we can do some math, and 4, 8, 12 plus 17 from the Alabaster is 29, plus Giotto gets him up to over 40, plus the bodies that I have field that are 12. So we actually can take advantage again of a tap out from Paul and go for an End of the False Savior targeting one of his tokens so that he can't somehow find a way to sack it off and deal enough damage to him equal to the total of everything else. So playing to the outs here on my side gets us the nice 2-0 win against Giotto. That is the match. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know what you think about it, and you'll see the deck profiles later this week. Until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.